We have some explosive audio here. You're not going to believe this. This is absolutely true. I seem insincere, and I'm not. Oh boy. When I was 13 years old, I did create a character called, well, eventually called Madcap. He was called Happy at the time. I've talked about this on the Nostalgic Pod Blast, but I want to set the record straight tonight. And actually, I met the head guy at Marvel in the 1980s, Jim Shooter. And I'm going to play some exclusive audio from yesterday. And man, I am just blown away. This is pretty awesome stuff. So let's get started. That's right. This is pretty impressive stuff. I got some good audio. Golly, it's absolutely true that I created the character that you see on camera. If you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube, you can see it. If you're listening, you can't. So please go to the Nostalgic, with a C, Nostalgic Pod Blast Facebook group, which is absolutely free to join. And you don't have to answer any questions or anything like that. Just go to the Nostalgic, with a C, Pod Blast Facebook group and join it, and or on YouTube, the Nostalgic Pod Blast YouTube channel. You would see a comic book, and there's a character I created called Madcap. I called him Happy. He was a demented happy face. Um, and I responded to an ad. I was 13 years old at the time, back in September 84. This caught my eye, and it was an ad. Let me show you this on camera for those watching on camera. There was a book called the Marvel Tryout Book. And I'm holding this up before the camera. And this actually came out in 1983. And it's an oversized publication where you could ink penciled art by John Romita Jr., or you could sketch new art. And a gentleman named Mark Bagley won the contest as original art penciler. But they had letterers, colorists. You could win a contest at different levels of the competition. But after this contest ended, and it was, let's be honest, it was generated to draw attention to this book and sell this book. But afterwards, people, and in fact, Jim Shooter, in his likeness, it might not have been his directive, but there were artists that drew Jim Shooter, who was the head guy at Marvel in the 1980s. And there was an ad, full page ad. I could show it to you right now if I wanted to, but this is just, I want to document some stuff here. In the ad, Jim Shooter said, "Hey, keep sending your ideas and submissions to Marvel Comics. You will receive the same compensation and benefits of a Marvel employee, artist, writer, etc." So, as a 13-year-old, that wasn't really my entire motivation. I just was into Marvel Comics, and I loved the whole, with great power comes great responsibility mantra. Loved it all. And I submitted a character in the style of the official handbook to the Marvel Universe, and some Marvel geeks will know what that is. In the early 80s, started, I think, in 1982 until 89 or even 90. They had an alphabetical listing of all the Marvel Universe characters in the official handbook to the Marvel Universe. Forgive me for not having that out to show you as a prop on camera, but I have it in the boxes behind me in the camera shot. but it was just an alphabetical listing of all the Marvel comics. It showed the first appearance of that character in the Marvel Universe, what they could do, a synopsis, that sort of thing. So when I submitted my idea for Happy, it was a full page, full color sketch, full page, full body shot of my character Happy with a description that he could drive people insane with his stare. And he was a demented happy face. And I still have artwork to this day in my collection from that time that's time stamped and all that good stuff. Don't have the original submission because back then they didn't have Kinkos and color copiers. This is a full color. And my friend Danny Cochran, friend of the Nostalgic Pod Blast, back then he thought it was stupid. He goes, before you mail that in, he goes, that is a dumb idea of a character. And he said on the Pod Blast himself, he didn't grasp how evil and twisted it is to have a character that could drive people insane just by staring at them. But at the time, he thought it was hokey and he didn't like it. And anyway, I'm going to play some audio from yesterday, from August 14th, 2021, of Jim Shooter when I told him, and I don't think he knew, that my character was stolen. Happy, and all they did was they changed the name from Happy, like a demented happy face with jagged eyes and a jagged mouth. They changed it to Madcap, and they put a cap on him. But other than that, the traits were the same, the colors were the same. It was a full color, full page drawing of my character Happy, and he was the demented happy face, yellow and purple. And those were the same doggone colors as Madcap. And the guy credited as writing the first issue of Madcap's appearance in Captain America 307, released in April 1985 with a cover date July. It was always 3 months ahead of real time, is Mark Gruenwald. And he passed away, unfortunately, in 1996. But the artist is still alive, British-born Paul Neary, Neary, I believe. So I'd like to talk with him. But yesterday, I talked with Jim Shooter, the man in charge of Marvel Comics from like 1978 until whenever. I haven't researched that part of it, but in the 80s into the 90s, I think. And I talked with him today, and he was a very genuine, nice person. He really seemed to care, and he offered more information than necessary. I've been advised not to share this audio content, but there were so many people shooting video when I asked him about my submission of Happy, which became Madcap. Again, they just changed the name from Happy, like a demented happy face, to Madcap, and they put a hat on him. My drawing did not have a hat, but get this. When the character first debuted as Madcap in Captain America issue 307, hit the streets in April 1985, he had a gun that would drive people insane. But the character Madcap, really Happy, returned 2 issues later in June 85 street date, and there was like a panel where like the gun malfunctioned and the intended victim said, "Oh, your gun jacked up," or whatever, your gun doesn't work. And then Madcap says, "Oh, the gun? I don't need the gun. I don't need the gun to drive you insane." Or I forget the dialogue, but I don't need the gun. I think he said, the gun? I don't need the gun. And he stares at him and drives the guy insane. That was my original concept. So it's like they waited a couple months. They introduced the character in Captain America 307, didn't have him in 308, then brought him back in 309, which Jim Shooter signed today at the convention in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I'll show you that cover. It's right here. He signed it, and it's been authenticated. But I want to play the audio where I asked him a question, and I talked about how I created the character of Madcap. And gosh, I've been advised not to put this on Facebook, and I don't care because there's people that shot. There were so many people shooting video today at FarleyCon in Chattanooga on well, it was yesterday actually, on August 14th, 2021. But I had some audio here from Jim Shooter where I asked him about my character and if he's aware of others submitting character ideas via synopsises and original art that were misappropriated. So let's see if this will come through. Here I am talking with Jim Shooter, who was in charge of Marvel Comics after Stan Lee in the 1980s. Let's listen. Oh my goodness.
Anyway, that they would listen. And he has Galton's dream of having a book publishing company and an animation studio. Between them, they were losing $10 million a year. They were disasters. The rest of the board members called them Galton's folly. But fortunately, we were making enough money not only for him to get those things, but to sustain the losses that they were disasters. So we were the only thing that was going right. Was
that's Jim Shooter talking. Just
what we built.
A little muffled, but this video is going to surface. Listen, here I come. You'll hear me clearly with the mic.
The big fat cats had really taken over, which just wasn't fun anymore. Jim, a couple more questions here.
Hi, Mr. Shooter. My name's Chance Bartels, Atlanta, Georgia. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. I remember the Marvel tryout book. I love that, and I think Mark Bagley won that contest.
That's true.
And I had sent in. You'll find this interesting. A drawing of a character I called Happy. He's like a demented happy face, and he can drive people insane.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, Mark Gruenwald's no longer with us. God rest his soul, since '96. But they came up with the character Madcap, based on my design, my colors, and all that stuff.
Really?
Swear to goodness. And no accusation. I just thought you'd find it interesting. A long time ago, I was 13 years old.
If I had known about that, I would have done something. Keep in mind, there could be something a little coincidental there, but I don't doubt that it was yours.
Thank you.
Because that happens. Sometimes even I, one time, there's a character called Eternal Warrior, and we searched it, seemed fine. We published it with Eternal Warrior, and a few months later, this guy walks into my office and says, "I showed you a character called Eternal Warrior like last year." And I forgot about it entirely. So we made it like a settlement. That's what Marvel should have done with you, but I wasn't there.
Well, no, my parents were like, "You should be flattered. Imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery," and I was just 13, and I'm like, but now when the movies are saying he's going to be in Deadpool, it's like, man,
that's really
and that's
wrong.
Disney. That's a Disney thing.
That's really wrong.
Well, look,
they should have, if it happened by accident, or even if somebody did it on purpose and they found out about it, they should have set that right, and I would have tried to, just like we did with Eternal Warrior. I just blanked on it, and I thought, yeah, that's a good name, and we did the trademark search, and it wasn't trademark.
Well, final thing, they put a hat on him. They did change a couple things, like it was the same color as Demented Happy Face, it was yellow and purple. Yeah, but I submitted it like the official handbook of the Marvel Universe, where it's like a full-page drawing with the synopsis.
Right.
And the only thing that changed, they put a hat on him, and then when he was first introduced in Captain America 307, he had a gun that would drive people insane, and then when he came back 2 issues later, there's a panel where it's like, "Oh, your gun doesn't work." He goes, "Oh, I don't need the gun. I can stare at you and make you go insane." I'm like, "Oh my God." Anyway, enough said.
I didn't know about that.
I didn't. I'm not an accusation. I'm just.
Well, it might not have happened when I was there. If I did know about it, I would have fixed it. I don't know who did that. Do you know the editor?
Well, Mark Gruenwald was credited as creating, and Neary, who's still alive, drew that issue, Captain America 307, and then Madcap came back in 309. But they changed the name from Happy, a demented happy face who could drive people insane with a stare, to Madcap, and they put a hat on him. That was really the only difference.
That's pretty cheesy. It's hard for me to believe Mark did that.
Oh, I'm not saying he did.
It could have been somebody working for him did it, or he helped or something. I don't know. But like I said, I either wasn't there or was entirely unaware of it. And they should have. That's terrible. That's really bad. I mean, it does happen. I'll tell you something. In the early days of comics, you're right. People were flattered, but nobody cared. Mort Weisinger used to have a little section of his letter page called "Bits of Legionnaire Business," and people would write in suggestions for new Legion superheroes characters. And Mort would say, well, if you see one you like, we'll make the characters, you know. So, for instance, Shadowlands, that was suggested. And Mort said, you know, do you have one of these guys you want to use? I said, well, Shadowlands sounds like fun, you know. And there was other ones too. And no one thought anything of it, you know, in those days. And I don't know why. But Gruenwald should have known that. Or if he did that deliberately, you know, that was not right. But Mark, well, it's hard for me to believe. Mark is such a good guy. And he was an honorable fellow. I don't understand that entirely, but I believe it. And I certainly would have looked into it, and we certainly would have done something about it. I am really astonished that they didn't look into it. And you brought it up to them, right?
Well, there was an ad where you guys had asked for submissions. You're like, we had such an overwhelming response to the Marvel Tryout book, and we're getting some great ideas. And it was like promised you'll get benefits of a Marvel writer and all that stuff. It's in the ad.
No, I know that. The thing is, we did the tryout book, which was a really good idea because you get all these samples and stuff. How do you prove you're a good inker unless you have professional pencils to work with? Like, how do you prove you're Joe Montana unless you have Jerry Rice? You know,
49ers, right?
So I created that book, which showed you what the comic book should look like when it's finished, and we peeled away the layers. Here it is uncolored. Here's pages uncolored. It was all one story, by the way. Here are the finished pages at the beginning of the story. The color pages you had to color were the next couple pages. And then there were pages that were not inked yet, but they were letters, and you could ink those pages. And then pages that had to be letters. And with each thing, we gave you what you needed. Here's the script, here's what tools you use, explain how to use the tools. And then there was, you pages the pencil, and then and we gave glorious blank paper for the pages of pencil. And it was all printed on marble artboard, the same paper. And,
unbelievable. Here it is.
The story
Pisses me off. My character.
A cliffhanger. And the last pages finish the story. So everybody could try whatever they wanted. A great idea, and then it sold incredibly well. And so then they wanted to do it again. And I did the same thing with this publisher, Mike Hobson. I didn't report to him, but we both reported to the president. We worked collegially pretty well. He said, why don't we make it into a contest? So then we came up with the contest, and we sold another ton of these things. But I think it was a valuable thing. It was a worthwhile thing. I'm sorry about what happened. P.S. Bagley, Mark Bagley, was the winner of the tryout contest.
Bless America.
And so he became Mark Bagley. I met today the winner who was the inking winner. He's here.
Wow.
And I ran into another guy who was the writing winner. I ran into a restaurant. I went to a restaurant with my girlfriend and, write this wedding shooter. How do you know my name? And, I had a reservation, but as soon as he sees me, and he takes a bottle of champagne for free, and I'm like, what's going on here? And,
Red carpet treatment.
It turned out that he was the guy that won the writing contest, but he had inherited this restaurant thing from his parents, so he became a restaurateur instead. So, somebody lettered it, somebody colored it. I'm not sure what happened to them, but it was a good thing, and we did live up to our obligations, except with you apparently. I'm sorry.
Now this merchandising, I'm like, my friend is more mad than I am because he saw me draw it. He gets me riled up, and I'm
Jim,
like, man, let him
move on. We've got time for one more question, and then we've got to get you back to your table. One more question? Yes, one more. Yeah, I guess both at Marvel and at the other companies, there were good things and really good times. Marvel, when it was being sold, was a bad thing. Valiant, we started out on a shoestring. My partner starts dating the banker, and then between them, they own more stock than I did, so they controlled the board. The reason we did Nintendo comics is because he was a lawyer and he represented Nintendo for media and entertainment. So So he made a deal with himself across the table, so on both sides of the table. And all of a sudden, the board approves it because it's his wife. I mean, by that point. And so I'm doing Nintendo comics. And the thing is, I didn't want to do Nintendo comics, but I really, if I quit, then J.J. Jackson and Don Perlin and the other people who come to work for me, they would have been out of work, and that wouldn't have been good. And so I thought, I'm going to stick with it. We're going to try to make this work. If it works and we start bringing in some money, then I can raise money and I can buy that turkey out, because that's what he wants, money. He doesn't care about the books. And so then the same thing, the World Wrestling Federation, he was their lawyer for entertainment, and so he made a deal. So he gets big fat fees for this, by the way. He made several $100,000 out of this. And I have to do wrestling books. I enjoyed doing wrestling books. I enjoyed doing Nintendo books. We did the best we could. But neither of those things were likely to succeed in this one. And then finally I got to do the superheroes, which is what I set out to do in the first place. And then we just started, kicking tail and taking names. We ate 15% of Marvel's market share like that. We were quickly the third largest publisher, on our way to being the first largest publisher. And just like at Marvel, he and his wife decided to cash in, sell the company, and they basically stole it from him. And it's long story short. And so that was probably the worst experience. But I started again. As my mother said, start again. And we started Defiant, which is what aptly named Defiant, right? And it just kept going. And P.S. Without me, the deal they made with Paramount fell through. Because the Paramount guy said, the creative guy's gone. It's a Pyrrhic victory. But when the Paramount people told them, forget it, we're not interested anymore, the creative guy's gone. That's good. So then there, shortly after that, they crashed and burned. So it was a little, sort of grim satisfaction there. And, I had my different struggles here and there with Defiant, probably, whatever. But I gotta tell you, and then I was freelance after that, still in. All in all, it wasn't a bad ride. A lot of fun, a lot of great people along the way. It wasn't a bad ride at all. I think probably when Valiant really took off, when we were successful, with the Diamond Show, and they gave me an award, the best publisher under somebody business or something, and then a Lifetime Achievement Award, which they also gave the one to Stan at that time. That was probably a pinnacle right there. Felt like I should. When I left Marvel, I was the pariah of comics, because they blamed everything on me. They blamed Kirby on me. They blamed Kirby on me. They blamed all this stuff that was completely out of my control on me, and they were successful at it. And also, when all the benefits were being taken away and stuff like that, they blamed that on me. And guys like Walt Simonson are saying, how come I'm not getting my foreign royalties? Now, if I say, you people upstairs are screwing you, Walt, then he quits and he goes to DC, and then this Jim Shooter's driving talent away. So what I told him, I said, I'm working on it, I'm trying to fix this, and I had more power than I knew. If I had only understood better that I was the key man that couldn't sell the company without me, I would have had more clout than I knew. But I didn't know it, and so they were able to get away with it, and like I said, by that time, nobody liked it, Marvel sure didn't, and the people that worked there thought that I caused all the problems. So I'm editor-in-chief of Marvel, and I'm employed. You think somebody would give me a call? Never did. Phone never rang. It wasn't until a while later when Disney hired me as a consultant. It was the first time I got a break. But so that was pretty bad. So when we started Valiant, the books were good, and we succeeded in that Diamond. I got the standing ovation from all the, there was like 1,000 retailers there. Yeah, maybe. And then of course I was stolen. Thanks a lot. I'm sorry to keep you guys so long. Thanks a lot.
All right, everybody, let's give Mr. Shooter again. Thank you for coming to us.
kind of rough audio. But so many people were shooting video yesterday on August 14th, 2021 at FarleyCon when Jim Shooter, the head man at Marvel Comics of the 80s, editor in chief, head honcho, head executive, took to the stage. And when I mentioned that, I I asked him a question and I mentioned how I really created the character of Madcap that you see on your screen right now if you're watching on Facebook Live or on YouTube. And all these cameras turned towards me, really phones and some professional cameras turned towards me. So someone recorded this on video. I didn't. I just, I was recording audio. It was a public Q&A, so it wasn't like I was being a spy or anything like that. And the audio is pretty bad, but you can hear what he's saying, and he's acknowledging, yes, I didn't condone what my underlings did, but I know that there were characters that were misappropriated. And I submitted this character. I created him really in September 1984, mailed him in November 1984, and this character hit the scene in April 1985 in Captain America issue 307, and then he appeared in issue 309 of Captain America. Oh man. And they took, well, not Jim Shooter, but someone at Marvel took the traits, the colors, everything about my character. The only thing that changed, they put a hat on him. And the reason I'm fired up is that I heard he possibly could be a villain in a new Deadpool movie. And the character was dormant for a long time. And people might say on the other side, why'd you wait so long to talk about this? Well, hell, when I was 13, when I created the character, and then issue 307, I was 14 at that time when the book came out. And I showed my friends Danny, Jeff, Scott. I said, look, this is the character I drew, because they all saw it and these guys are still around. And they know I really created this character on a draft board. I had a real artist draft board thanks to my parents, you know, a professional art setup. And I drew this character, submitted it, and I have drawings still. I can't telegraph my punch if it needs to go that far, but I have artwork and stuff. But this is a friendly conversation right now. Um, Danny knows. Danny's more mad than I am because the character of Madcap came back in, say, 2010-ish, around 2009, 2010, in some recent comic books at that time. And there have been some merchandising products made in Madcap's image, the posters, coffee mugs, even a Funko Pop character. That's when you know you've made it, when you're in the Funko Pop. Not one of my favorite toys or creations, but that's besides the point, because I don't think they look like the characters they represent are supposed to be, or that they're supposed to be. That's just me. I nothing against them, but it's a fad. It's popular. It's now a major part of pop culture, the Funko Pop. But I can't stand them because I just don't think they look like the characters. But Madcap became a Funko Pop, and Danny, my friend Daniel C. I don't want to give away his name right now, but he is a regular member of the Nostalgic Pod Blast, and whenever he sees a merchandising item of Madcap, Happy, my character that I created, he texts me, calls me on the phone, gets me fired up. And all along, my parents, when I was 13 at the time and 14, when the book came out, early 14, I just turned 14, they said, you should be flattered. Imitation is the most sincerest form of flattery. And that's fine. And that they condemn that to this day. But Danny gets me all fired up because, dude, you got to fight. This is BS. We all knew you created this character. I hated the character. This is Danny's words. He goes, and it's true. He didn't like the character of Madcap, a character that could drive people insane by staring at them. Danny didn't appreciate the value of that kind of a tribute in a character, in a villain. at the time when he was like 14 years old. He's a year older than me. But now he does appreciate it. And the crazy thing is, the reason it's such an obvious theft, another reason why, is because when the character was first released in Captain America issue 307, he had a gun that would drive people insane. With like these bubbles that would fire out of the gun. And when they stared at these bubbles, it would drive them crazy. Well, when the character returned 2 issues later in Captain America 309, released in June 1985, there's a panel where the gun's malfunctioning and the guy's like, "Oh, you can't get me," or whatever. Gun? I don't need the gun. And Madcap says, and he just stares at the guy with his eyes and drives the guy crazy. And it's just the way I presented it to Marvel when I was 13, when I mailed that in. By the way, I had a letter published in the Incredible Hulk issue 296 that Jim Shooter signed today, or yesterday, August 14th, 2021, which establishes that at that point in time, I was sending stuff to Marvel, like a fan letter or art submissions, and they were begging for submissions at that time in Jim Shooter, the guy I met today's likeness. I mean, really, his a drawing of his face in his words. He was the guy in charge of Marvel at that time, and he's saying he's begging for submissions. He's like, "You will get all of the benefits of a Marvel employee, a Marvel artist or writer." Anyway, credit. I have all that stuff, and it's all right there in the comics. I mean, it's no secret. So anyway, I'm going to conclude this video, but I wanted to present that audio from earlier today. It's important to me, and I have other audio, and I met with Mr. Shooter privately, and he was very diplomatic. He could have treated me like a nut, like a crackpot, "Oh yeah, you created this character or whatever," and he goes, "I believe you." He knew. I mean, he didn't divulge everything he really knows, but he goes, "I told my guys, don't do that." He didn't really elaborate on what "don't do that" means, but he said to me today and to others, I told him don't do that because I saw a lot of unethical behaviors at Marvel in those days, but I couldn't oversee every little thing going on. And I believe that. I really believe that. And I think this man has honor and integrity. Anyway, I just wanted to play that audio. It's important to me. And it was an acknowledgement. And God bless you, Mr. Jim Shooter, former head of Marvel, for doing that. I just want to test this audio. I'm going to play it back before I go to sleep. Madcap is my creation. Chance Bartels. That's my name. Chance C. Bartels. I absolutely 100% with witnesses. It's coming out. You'll find out. I created Madcap. Not only the attributes of driving people insane by staring at them, but the artwork, the very colors, the yellow and purple colors. The only thing they changed the name from Happy to Madcap and put a gosh darn hat on him originally. And then he lost the hat. Drives me nuts to this day. Enough said for now. But it's going to court. God bless.